We're here in Houston, Texas with Dr. Kaba Hiawatha Kamene. The day is April 9th, 2016. This is our event, the People's New Black Panther Party. It ain't over till we win. We're here to sit down and talk to Dr. Kaba and, you know, just the brothers, no sisters, no feminine energy in the room. And we're just going to sit here and quiz Dr. Kaba, talk to him about the direction we're heading in, get some wisdom from the brother. You know, many people have been coming into these events, and you know, the people still leave in the same condition that these people left out in, but today we're here to work. So without further ado, we have Dr. Kaba Kamene here. Thank you for coming to Houston, Texas, brother.
No doubt. Thank you for inviting me, brother.
We're definitely here to do some work and get busy, so we want to go ahead and open up the floor and start quizzing your mind. If you want to open up and start with anything, you can open up and start. If not, we can go ahead and ask some questions or whichever direction you want to go.
Well, my bottom line is just to thank you for all your hospitality, you know, and how I've been received here in Houston. You know, they talk about Southern hospitality, so from someone from Bronx, New York, I now know the real meaning of Southern hospitality, because I really have been treated very well. So I appreciate all that you've done to make this happen. And like I told you, Brother Yakin, you basically were the main conversation. You were mainly the brother that I spoke to, and I just respect the way you put this together. You know, you were on post, you were meticulous, and everything you said you were going to do, you did. You know, and then coming to the airport and meeting my other brothers that made all of this happen also. It just shows that we can do this when we want to, and so I appreciate all that you've done to make this happen.
All right, thank you very much.
Hotep for that.
Hotep. So, you know, you let us know yesterday. You know, we definitely enjoyed visiting with you yesterday. And you let us know that you knew Dr. Khalid Muhammad personally.
Yes,
we had no idea, you know, that information. So if you want to regurgitate any of that information with Dr. Khalid or Dr. John Henry Clark, how the mantle was passed down for you, that was a very interesting conversation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you know, I mean, really the point was in terms of Dr. Khalid, you know, and I also think of Malcolm, because a lot of people never really understood Dr. Khalid. You know, he was, when you were one-on-one with him, he was very soft-spoken, very intelligent, very diligent. You know, and the one thing I appreciated about him is that he never asked anybody to do anything that he himself hadn't done already. He led by example. And, you know, even though he spoke the way he spoke, and the way he spoke may not have been the way I may present myself, but variety is what makes things happen. But the one thing that I've often said about Dr. Khalid was that he was very healthy. He was a good doctor, because he told folk what was wrong with him. And so I often call him a good doctor. It's like if you go to a doctor and doctor tells you everything good, everything you want to hear, right, and then you're dead in 6 months. As opposed to go to the doctor and say, no, you're sick, right, you real sick. And that's what Dr. Khalid told people of European descent, you're sick. And I got the prescription for you, you know. And so I always called him the good doctor, because he let you know you were sick. He also gave you the prescription as to how you could get better. And I've often believed that the America that we're living in needs to hear what an angry black man sounds like. Because too many folk are saying things that sound good, and we all going to get together and hold hands, and that's not what's going on. And Dr. Khalid, you know, he had the prescription for our future. So I had a lot of respect for him. And I had met Dr. Khalid through a lecture series that was developed by attorney Alton Maddox. We called him the attorney at war, the warrior at law. And every Wednesday he had a lecture, and he'd invite different people in. And I spoke there, and many of the speakers, Runoko Rashidi spoke there, and many of the great speakers, Dr. Patricia Newton spoke there. And so I was familiar with Dr. Khalid through that lecture series. And I had never met him personally, but I was aware of him having attended his lectures. And this is going back years now, when he was first coming back into the movement and doing what he was doing. And I remember there was a place called Mart 125. There was an African market on 125th Street. On the bottom floor, it had all the markets. It had little stalls where people sold books and African clothing and perfumes and oils and things like that. But on the second floor, they had the restaurants. And I used to go to the one on the end because it was a soul food restaurant, you know, that cooked their greens and everything with no meat. So, you know, I used to eat there at the end. And the restrooms are at the end also. There was a bakery, there was a Jamaican spot, and I remember one time a brother passed me, And he said, "Wow, it's great to see you." And he said, "Wow, this is my lucky day. On one end, I get to meet Dr. Khalid, and on this end, I see you." And I asked him, I said, Dr. Khalid here? He said, "Yeah." He said, "No, because Dr. Khalid used to like to eat at the bakery on the other end of the Martin 125. So he said, "You ain't never met?" I said, "I know him. I've seen him a lot of times, but I've never had it." He said, "Well, give me the honor of introducing you two good brothers." So I got up, went back there, and he was familiar with my work, having come to the lecture series also. So we knew each other, but we did not personally meet.
Right.
So he said, "What you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm eating on the other side." He said, "Bring your food over here." So I went back, got my plate, and sat at the table with him. That was our first conversation. And from there, our conversations continued. And I've always considered Dr. Khalid a good friend, And when I heard that the brother joined the Ancestors, it was just, it took us back, because as you know, the way the brother was, you would never have thought. He was strong all the time, sharp all the time, And so, but when people like him join the Ancestors, what we have to do is we have to give birth to them. You mourn their passing, but you make sure that their work never stops. That's the only way we can honor Dr. Khalid. It's the only way we can honor Dr. Ben or Dr. Clark, is by continuing their work and continuing. If we really believe in them, we have to continue their work. And so, a lot of what I do as it related to the Rian Youth March, which I was part of and attempted to assemble some of the children from the public school system to be a part of that, because that was the early part of the year. So that school was just beginning at that time when the Rian Youth March occurred. So, but it was a powerful day. I remember that day clearly.
I have a question about that day. Me personally, I struggle with it a little bit, because coming into the movement, you can be on the outside looking at something, but then you get involved, and you start hearing things. And as far as Dr. Khalid's death was concerned, whether it was something that was natural, or maybe if there was some foul play involved, is that something that we should be worried about, or something I should be worried about personally? Or is that something that I should just go ahead and let go of, and just go ahead and let the work speak for itself moving forward?
That's the bottom line. You let the work speak for itself. Because in the world we're living in today, when you do this type of great work, I call it great work with a capital G and a capital W, great work. You literally are at a point where you are creating a new world order. And there are people who don't want that to happen. So you go into it realizing it. And one of the things that I've realized is what you have to do, what I've attempted to do, is to lose the fear of death. Because once you lose the fear of death, there is nothing that those who would wish to oppress you can negotiate with. Because the bottom line, the last thing that you negotiate after all is said and done is your life. And when you're not concerned about that, when you believe and understand firmly, as I do, because although I'm very practical, I'm also very spiritual. And I believe that having experienced this, I'm 62, I'll be 63 in November, and have experienced my life as I have, I know that each of us is given a divine destiny. And when we obey that order by the Creator and by the ancestors, things will unfold. And that if it is not your time, it's not your time. So it doesn't make a difference what you do. You can be in the most precarious, dangerous situation you can be in, but if it's not your time, you will walk out of there unblemished. Right. Whereas at another time, if it's your time, you can walk across the street, trip, bang your head, and you're gone. Right. So I live my life with a divine purpose, and that there is a purpose, and there is nothing to worry about, because all things are in place. As much as we miss Martin Luther King and Malcolm X having died so young, it was their time. They did what they had to do. Their assignment that they were given on earth to do by a divine entity, whoever it may be, they had accomplished it. And that is why I think that one of the most phenomenal things about when we look at Malcolm is that he knew his time was coming. From speaking to people that I know, being a student of Professor Clark, Professor Clark being one of Malcolm's, if not Malcolm's main history teacher, there were stories that Dr. Clark told me about Malcolm. stories that were just as we're sitting in this room today and we're experiencing each other. He was in a room with Malcolm, experiencing things with Malcolm. And so I heard stories about Malcolm and about what was going on. I was introduced to Earl Grant, who was Malcolm's probably closest confidant at the end of his life. In the movie by Spike Lee, Earl Grant is the one that Malcolm sends to make a call.
Right.
And then he hugs him, okay? That's Earl Grant. Earl Grant was into science. He was in to a lot of different cutting-edge technology. He was a scientist, and he had heard about the work I was doing in astronomy, African astronomy, so he used to come to my classes with a friend that used to attend my classes, and then she would drive he and I back, because this was in Queens, New York, which is a pretty far distance. You know, I mean, I would say that the distance could be from where you picked me up to here. So I'm not sure of mileage, but it's quite far away. It's two different boroughs in New York. So we would have conversations, and Earl would tell me stories. And one of the most important stories I think Earl told me was, we were in the car. Earl was in the passenger seat, the sister was driving, and I was in the back seat. But I positioned myself between the two seats so that I could listen to Earl, because I knew who he was. And something went down, and I was talking to him about Malcolm. I was always asking him questions about Malcolm. And he halfway turned around, and he couldn't come all the way around. But what he said to me is that with Malcolm, we believed we had a chance. And not only did I hear what he said, but I felt the tear. You know, that he was, and other people around Malcolm were so proud of him and had such trust in him that they put everything they had into his success. Right. You know, that they believed that we as a people had an opportunity to move ahead with Malcolm, that Malcolm was that shining black prince that had been sent to do this work. And he was talking about the assassination and what it literally did. Now, I met Professor Clark when I was 12 and a half. This would have been like, give or take, 1966. I met him when Dr. Clark had come back from West Africa. That after Malcolm's assassination in 65, he was so devastated he had to get out of the United States. Man. So he left. He went to West Africa, and he did a number. And when you hear Dr. Clark telling stories about Kwame Nkrumah, and he said that Kwame Nkrumah got off line, got off the parade to come over to him to talk to him, well, that's the time that we're talking about here. And I met Dr. Clark in the end of June of that particular year. And so from that point on, I heard stories. But the thing about Malcolm and about Martin Luther King is they all knew that their time was up when it was up. If you listen to Dr. Clark's speech, as you were, if you listen to Dr. Martin Luther King's speech on April 3rd, when he's speaking at the Masonic Temple in Memphis, he literally is outlining the fact that, you know, he's talking to us. He's saying, I may not get there with you, but I'm not worried about anything, you know. But he said, I just want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. And I've always seen that almost as a cosmic conversation, because for some reason he knew that 24 hours from that moment he was not going to be with us anymore. He knew his time was up. But he wanted us to know that night, April 3rd, that we would get there. And that's the faith that I go to my community with. We're going to make it. It ain't over till we win. That's the mentality that we have to have, realizing that, okay, we physically may not get there, but I think of our ancestors on the plantation, who, when I think of what they were going through, realizing that it is very possible, outside of not getting on the Underground Railroad, that they would never be so-called free. But they knew that if they just kept doing what they were doing, if they keep on keeping on, somebody would be free. And that's who we are. We are their greatest dreams. So we don't have a right to give up. We don't have a right to get scared. After what they went through. Think of what they went through. I mean, I think about what they went through. I think of what their everyday life was. You know, we got up this morning. You know, we knew we were going to come together. We had a wonderful meal at Seeds, you know. We know after this we're going to go someplace and have a fantastic evening. I know tomorrow, and I'm speaking, of course, with all the Creator's will, making it happen, of course. But if things go as I think they're going to go, everything. But our ancestors didn't have that. They were going back on that plantation. They were going back to work again. They were going back to be enslaved and to be denigrated and to be spoken of in a certain way. And I just say, if they did what they did then, we have no right to think that we can't do this now. It's just not something that goes into my head. We're going to do this, period. And it ain't over till we win. And we are just part of the continuing cycle of their world and what they created. And we will make it better for our generations that follow us. And one day I'm going to have that school. I may physically not be there, but we will have that school for our children that is teaching them the things that they need to know to emancipate and liberate their minds. We're going to do it. Just like our ancestors may not have been free as they wanted to, but they knew somebody would be free. That's the same faith I have that, well, maybe that school that I want is not here right now, but if I just keep doing what I'm doing, down the road, brother here or brother James is going to make that school happen. So I'm not worried about anything. Just like Dr. King said, I ain't worried about no man. I ain't worried about nothing. The only thing I'm concerned about is putting my one foot in front of the other to keep this thing going. And when you focus on that, you can achieve your goal. But when you allow things outside of your path to distract you, whatever it may be, when you allow distractions in, that's all the forces of evil attempting to take you away from where you're headed. Nothing can get in our way.